A warm hello, and I'm quite happy to be both sitting here in my meditation posture and also to be here with all of you and to be able to share my meditation in a sense with you and do this together. So, welcome everyone. The topic for this week's Dharma talks is compassion. And for those who meditate, people who meditate, compassion, the source of compassion or the reference point for compassion is maybe very different than most people who don't meditate. That I think when we do mindfulness meditation and discover how to really be present for oneself, so as not to be hindered by doubt and ill will and desires and distractions, to really learn how to sit here present, really present in the present moment with a sense of well-being or a sense of openness and kind of a groundedness in the present. That groundedness in the present and the sense of well-being that can come from that, sense of ease that can come from that, that's the same the doorway for that, the door that opens, is a doorway for compassion. In other words, compassion isn't something that, that in Buddhist point of view, it's something that comes along with or is built on a deep sense of at ease that one has with oneself, with one life, an ease that comes from not being caught in hindrances and caught in attachments and clinging. It's kind of like the very open presence that is the doorway for well-being for oneself, is also the doorway for compassionate concern or compassionate response to the suffering of the world. And in a sense, maybe that's one of the gifts of meditation practice, is to provide compassion with a kind of simplicity or an absence of clinging, an absence of hindrances, an absence of the things that get mixed up with compassion to cause distress. Distressed compassion, stressed compassion. So we'll sit here with maybe, if you wish, with the idea that we're opening up to our potential for compassionate presence. But we do it indirectly, that we're doing it by really being here, curious, interested, valuing with deep respect for what it's like to be really here and present, as if it's the doorway to compassion, the doorway to love, without trying for it to be compassion. Just stepping into this doorway of here and now. So taking a meditation posture, and gently closing your eyes, and taking a couple of moments here to see if you could establish an attitude of valuing your embodied experience now. valuing being in the present moment, rather than being in a kind of virtual reality of ideas and thoughts that are about the future or the past or fantasy. Or about other places than right here. So an attitude of willingness to be present here. And then to take a few long, slow, deep breaths, as if your breathing, your deep breathing, is inviting you, welcoming you here in this body at this time, inviting you into the present moment. And the long exhale is a releasing, a temporary releasing of your thoughts and concerns and worries. Maybe imagining that you're putting those things up on a shelf. And you can pick them up again after the meditation. But for now, maybe you can accept the invitation, the welcoming to being here with this body at this time. And then letting your breathing return to normal. Taking a few moments to relax your body further. The tensions of your face, allowing them to soften, allowing the face to melt. As you exhale, allowing the shoulders to soften, relax. Allowing the shoulders to dissolve the tension that's there. Softening the belly. Giving some freedom to the belly. Freedom to relax and hang forward, hang down, to settle. And then as if you can take a loving hand and reach deep down inside of yourself to the deepest place that's there in you. To gently touch the deepest place that you can find. And as you exhale, to relax the deepest places of tension. Relax around the deepest places that you know, you can feel. And then can be a wonderful feeling that only is present in the present moment, which is a gentle tenderness, softness within. And perhaps you could Now, be tenderly aware of your body breathing. Or maybe the breath is tender. And you're being touched tenderly by breathing. Being touched differently by the inhale than the exhale. With the sensations of the body breathing, being a welcome, an invitation for you to be present for those experiences. Noticing if your thinking mind takes you away from the present moment, takes you away from a deeper connection to here, to yourself. And if you notice that it does so, and you can feel the difference between being connected to yourself and not connected, choose being connected. Don't allow the thinking, the distractions, to choose for you. Choose to stay connected here and now to the body breathing. As you exhale, relaxing the thinking muscle, the thinking mind, softening the energy and the waves of thinking, as if thinking are waves on the sea. Let the waves quiet and lessen. present moment can be a door to discovering well-being, sense of ease within you. Not always easy to discover, but maybe if you turn up the corners of your lips a little bit for a little half smile, quarter smile, perhaps a little bit easier to discover some feeling of well-being, however mild, with being here and now, some pleasure. And then to breathe with that well-being. Let the well-being be whatever small it is to guide you into a fuller connection to your body breathing. Breathing with whatever sense of well-being or pleasure that might be here, in spite of whatever discomfort you might have. Notice what's comfortable or comforting here and now. Breathe with it. And as you breathe, especially on the exhale, let go of your thoughts. Let the thinking mind become stiller and more open and attentive to here and now. With the exhale, settling in further into your body, into your being. With the exhale, letting go into your physical existence right now. And on the inhale, to feel whatever goodness, rightness, well-being might be within you. Letting go of striving and trying. More allowing yourself to feel and be present. Allowing your body, your breathing, to come to you and to simply let it be. And might there be within you some place, location for compassion? Might there be some tenderness, some warmth, some love within you, however small hint of something that feels a bit like the presence of compassion, a warmth, a kindness, a love. Something very simple, that if it had words, it would wish you well and for you to be free of suffering. But it's so simple, it has no words. It's just an attitude, a feeling, free of desires, free of clinging and need, free of fear and worry. Just a simple inner glow of compassionate warmth, wanting nothing, and for these minutes doing nothing, just an attitude. Breathing with that attitude, having this attitude of compassion guide you to a simple presence with the breathing. And then as we come to the end of this meditation, to feel perhaps your ability to be open and attentive and aware of the world around you, the people in your lives, people of your neighborhood, and in your wider community and across the lands. And then to see if the tender, gentle attitude of compassionate warmth, warm compassion that needs nothing, is distressed by nothing, just warmth, just care, a tenderness that's open and have this attitude of compassion, care, love, warmth radiate from you as if it could spread across the lands. That your compassion can be inclusive of all beings. Breathing in and breathing out. And as we come there now to the very end of this sitting, to consider or to hold all beings in your wish for their well-being. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe and healthy. May all beings be free. And may it be that on this day that you share your compassion with someone else. Very simple compassion. Maybe not with any words, but with your presence, your attention, your interest in them, your kindness, your well-wishing. May all beings everywhere be happy. So now, in this, continuing with this second talk on compassion, karuna. So maybe, as I said yesterday, there are maybe many different definitions of compassion, and maybe there are many forms of compassion as there are people. That compassion, as wonderful it is and profound as it is, we should be very careful not to put it into just like there's one thing, we know what compassion is. And but even so, in the range of what compassion can be, that the Buddhist idea of karuna, Karuna, has its own flavor, its own particular way of being or aspect that's, I think, quite worthwhile to learning and understanding this flavor of compassion. And I don't know exactly if it's the case, but I have been told or read that the word karuna comes from the same root as the word karma, meaning action. And that somehow in the pre-Buddhist time, karuna referred to something called sacred action, kind of special action, which then maybe the Buddha or the religious world of his time utilized to refer to something that's close to what we call compassion. But one of the characteristics of the Buddha's discussion about karuna is that he primarily talked about it as something that's cultivated and experienced in meditation. He had another word called anukampa, which was the expression of care, maybe compassion, that is translated into how we act in the world, act with care, act with compassion. But this very important word karuna is primarily something that is cultivated in meditation, discovered in meditation for many of us. And what makes that special, I think, is that meditation is a place where we're settling in to discover how to be free of the hindrances, among other things, to be free of ill will, to be free of compulsive desire, free of sloth, torpor, restlessness, anxiety, regrets, and doubt, to discover how to not have any clingings, to be deeply at ease and at peace here. And the whole experience of encountering suffering or being concerned with the suffering of oneself and with others, when the hindrances and clinging are not there or not in the forefront, not complicating it, gives compassion a very unique flavor. It's a compassion then that is free of tension, free of clinging, free of the distress that arises because of clinging. And in particular, one of the forms of distress that can be born out of, together with compassion, out of contact with suffering, is related to all the ways in which we cling to self, all the ways in which the self is wounded or hurt or easily triggered or made frightened. And when this sense of self gets rectified, gets harmonized, gets softened, gets kind of dissolves in this wonderful field of goodwill, of meditation, then self and self-concern, self-preoccupation, egotism, doesn't get tied up in the compassion. And so compassion then becomes free of what's called the near enemy of compassion. Near enemy is something that looks like compassion but isn't. And sometimes it's called pity, that we feel pity for people, or a certain kind of distressed feeling of horror or alarm, where we really feel strongly motivated and concerned and caught in the experience of suffering and the suffering of others. And we might call it, and we worry about people, and we might call that compassion, but maybe it's not quite compassion. It looks like compassion, but it isn't the kind of karuna compassion, this karuna that the reference point is this deep sense of inner well-being. And if we have that sense of well-being and happiness within, that comes from letting go of clinging and letting go of self-preoccupation, then one of the kind of confusions around compassion is that if we're compassionate, we're altruistic. That we don't have any concern with ourselves, and we just give ourselves completely over to caring for other people as if we don't matter. And it's fine for us to stay up, all night and exhaust ourselves and do whatever we can because we're supposed to be compassionate. But when the reference point is this sense of well-being and meditation, then it becomes obvious that we're harming ourselves when we don't give any attention to ourselves. And so the compassion, this karuna in Buddhism, is not an altruistic compassion, but it's also not a selfish compassion. It's a compassion that kind of I like to think of it as glowing from the inside, from our heart outwards. And it takes care of the first human being that it encounters, glowing from the heart. And the first human being that this compassionate care encounters will be yourself. Everything from the center of your heart outwards. And so that also warrants this care, this love, this goodwill, this wanting to feel and to wanting well-being for you yourself. And it flows out from there, because as we get centered, nothing gets stuck, nothing gets limited. These feelings, these attitudes, there's an openness that is inclusive of the world around us and others. But it's not an inclusion and a concern for others where we lose touch with what's here, because this karuna flows from the heart through us out into the world. And so the sense of well-being in meditation, for example, that allows us to connect to the heart is the very well-being or openness, the well-being that allows this compassion to flow outwards. And so one of the characteristics of karuna that I mentioned yesterday is that it is not tied up in sorrow. It's not tied up in distress. We don't take it on as a burden, but actually there's a feeling of lightness or sweetness in this. Even though the heart might be broken, it might be, there's things, my heart gets broken regularly with the suffering of the world and what people tell me they've experienced in their life, or what I read in the news or anything. And there have been times when I've sobbed after reading the news because of what I see there. But I don't feel that I'm distressed, and I don't feel like that I'm upset or that I feel sorrow exactly. I just feel deeply like heartbroken and maybe sad without sorrow, or sorrow without sad. A kind of feeling, a poignant feeling that has no clinging to it. It's not self-preoccupation. It's not feeling sorry for myself or feeling distressed in myself. I'm quite welcoming and willing to have my heart broken and feel this kind of poignant, kind of, I don't know what to call it, sadness in the world. But it's not it has no weight to it, and it has no. I don't feel like I'm suffering with it. And so this compassion, this karuna, that is not altruistic, but is not self-centered, where we ourselves are as important to care for as anyone else. And so there's a balance then in the compassion with kind of in self-care and other care. Though Buddhists tend not to like to use the word self-care because it's such a magnet for self-preoccupation, and the idea of self-centeredness is so powerful that even our language we probably should be a little bit careful with, so that we don't it doesn't become a magnet for self-concern. But as we can begin to discover this inner capacity for compassion, karuna, that comes from letting go of distraction, clinging, the hindrances, and as I keep saying, for many of us, it starts in meditation. Then the very compassion is in a field, in a context of certain degree of freedom or ease or absence of clinging, that itself supports all kinds of transformations. And so with compassion and this deep letting go of the hindrances and selfishness, resentment can turn to forgiveness. Hostility can turn into friendliness. And anger can turn into kindness. That compassion is a force that prompts or encourages the movement of letting go of further clinging. Why hold on to anything when we keep hurting ourselves if we hold on to it? Jealousy is a holding on. Hostility is a holding on. Ill will is a holding on. And this combination of this connection to this deeper well-being and this compassion is like a medicine or like a balm that transforms these places that are tough and hard inside of us. And whether that's hostility to ourselves or to others, whether it's being angry with ourselves, critical ourselves or others, all the different ways we suffer. If we're deeply afraid or deeply hurt, to meet that with this softness and compassion and kindness and non-clinging. To meet our self-suffering with that part of us that's not self-preoccupied. To be able to be present in a loving and careful way. And so so one of the things that meditation does for many of us is that it does help us meet our own suffering. And it isn't, and partly really knowing our own suffering helps us to understand the suffering of others better. But, and so that helps us to have compassion for them. But it's also that as we understand ourselves better, we understand how we get, how the complications that might arise when we're encountering others, when we give birth to the near enemies of compassion, or what's called the far enemies of compassion, which is horror or deep distress, or even the far, far enemy of is cruelty. And some people will respond to distress in the world. It's so painful and so unacceptable to be present for it. They just want to push it away, and sometimes even in forms of cruelty. So, so the reference point for karuna, this particular kind of compassion in the teachings of the Buddha, is meditation practice. And hopefully when we, over time, as we discover the freedom that comes with meditation and how that can give rise to a certain kind of compassion that's very clean, that maybe it's compassion that's kind of like purified gold. It's kind of purified all the dross and all the impurities that can come along with it. Then we understand that compassion doesn't diminish us. Compassion is not stressful in and of itself. That it's not sharing in the suffering of others in the sense of feeling their suffering so we feel it the same way, but rather it's being with their suffering with a tenderness and a care and a concern and empathy, where we are bringing this soft, tender attitude of care and love to meet them and care for people and support them and be their friends, to be with them. And in this way, it's said that if you want to be happy in your life, be compassionate. Easier said than done, but the reference point for this little saying is this karuna that we discover or evoke or develop in the freedom from clinging, the freedom from the hindrances that that meditation can lead to, if we can really be present here. And if we can't be fully present here, then it's a wonderful thing to be compassionate for that, to be caring and loving for all the challenges we have. And because sometimes it's through compassion that we finally learn how to really be present here for our lived experience. So I hope that you will spend some time with thinking about, exploring, reflecting on the relationship between compassion and the absence of clinging, the absence of self-centeredness, but with a presence of self-love. So, thank you all very much.